Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky. Like always, we try and find fascinating people to talk to you about the world of HR data, analytics, and technology. Today, we have Joseph Ifiegbu, who's the CEO and co-founder of eqtble. Joseph, you've had a really fascinating career. We're going to get into that in 1 second, but I'd like to also welcome Dwight. How you doing, Dwight?
Great. Good to be here. Thanks for being with us, Joseph.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Joseph, you got to tell us, because you've had a really cool career. You were in the people analytics team at WeWork, and you started eqtble. Give us a journey. Tell us how you got there.
Yeah. So thanks for having me again. For my journey to HR analytics was actually it was a fluke, I would say. My background is in statistics and data science, and I worked in different sectors, right? I worked in health analytics, I worked in sports analytics, research, e-commerce, retail, before landing in people analytics, right? So my last role actually before going into people analytics at WeWork was actually Toys R Us, and my role there was a lot of like hypothesis and A/B tests. And so one of the interesting things one of the massive projects that I worked on was actually like this market basket analysis where, you're looking at like the behaviors of shoppers. So for example, if someone bought a pacifier, for example, what are the chances that they'll buy the bottle, right? The bottle for the kid. And so you saw that, well, people that bought pacifiers also bought the bottles, right? And so we basically said, well, put the bottles next to the pacifiers on the shelves so that way it increases like sales. Right. So you're looking at those patterns of behaviors. And so during that role, I just really got fascinated about people and decision making, right? And so when I was leaving the role and I was looking for something new, I came across this role at WeWork. I didn't even know the company at the time. I'm like, WeWork? What is a WeWork? and then I saw people analytics. I'm like, people analytics, what is that? And so I started reading about the role. I was like, wow, this is actually interesting. And I just went on this research trail. I just like reading all this stuff. I'm like, this is really cool. This is like a newer field in analytics. And I was like, absolutely. And so I applied for the role, and luckily I got the role. And it was interesting because I was the first person they brought in to help build the team at the time at WeWork. And it was fascinating because obviously I had a data science skill, but I had to learn the domain of HR. And I never thought in my life, like, I'm going to grow up to be a HR person. Like, no, there's no ways. But it ended up just being like just such an incredible journey. I really enjoyed my time just building analytic solutions for the HR domain, to the point where after doing that, I went to Snap and I did the same thing there as the head of HR tech as well. Mm-hmm. And it was in working at Snap and WeWork, especially WeWork was where the idea came, that the idea for eqtble came along. So that's a bit of that journey.
That's awesome. A lot of us fall into it, and it's fascinating to hear all the pathways. By the way, a lot of us look at Toys R Us and we go, I know it died from lots of different cuts, but we drive past a lot of Toys R Us stores and we go, I really wish it were still there. I'm still a Toys R Us kid.
I still remember the jingle.
Yes. Do you want to sing it now, Dwight?
No, we don't want to scare away our listeners.
I think a lot of our listeners are going, wait a minute. I don't want to grow up.
Right, exactly.
There we go. All right. That's the last singing that we're going to do on the HR Data Labs podcast.
We promise.
Yes, we promise. So, Joseph, though, there's another really fun thing that we know about you. What is that one fun thing that no one knows about Joseph?
Oh, yeah. So I should say this, but I'm a big anime fan, right? And I usually just hide it. I'm like,
Why? Why? There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, massive. I got into it in my teenage years and not stop. I read the manga. I'm out there. Yeah, so like I'm a big anime fan.
There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, I go to Comic-Cons all the time. And, me and my family all dress up. My kids dress up as anime characters. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite anime or?
I don't have one. I don't. The kids do. They're trying to get me into it, but
do you know which one they like watching or not?
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
I'm a really bad father. I don't know what my kids are into.
No.
That's my fun thing for the day. I'm a bad dad. There you go.
Oh man, that's awesome.
So our topic for today is one that really tugs at our heartstrings all the time because Dwight and I are actually doing a series on DE&I, but talking about the life cycle, the employee life cycle through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the fun things that we get to do in the HR Data Labs podcast is talk to a lot of thought leaders about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging from lots of different perspectives. So this is going to be a fun one for us. And I think a lot of our audience are looking for ways in which they can measure and understand the impact of DE&I in their organizations.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, DEI is it's to some degree it's sad that it's become like this buzzword. Like everyone just puts into oh, we're doing DEI, and in actuality it's just beyond the buzzword word, right? Like DEI is actually, the power of it is in the doing, is in the action, right? And so yeah, I'm excited to really delve in and really discuss all my thoughts around this, and especially for in terms of just that employee life cycle.
So let's get to the first question, which is, what is it to you? How do you define diversity, equity, and inclusion? And where and how is it even achievable inside of these organizations?
Are you tired of talent and HR podcasts that sound like corporate training videos? Same. Talentless is the no-fluff show about hiring, leadership, culture, and what's actually going on in the world of work. Talentless is a podcast for recruiters by recruiters. Hosted by Desiree Goldie and Ashley King, they're smart, occasionally salty, and never afraid to say what everyone else is thinking. Listen wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe at talentlesspodcast.com.
Yeah, not to be cliche, I like this one quote. It's like that diversity, equity, inclusion. It's like diversity is being invited to the party, right, or something like that, and the inclusion is being invited to dance. And it's interesting. I thought it was a really cool quote. But but on the just following off of that definition, really, I think for me it's about access. That's the word, right? And why I say access is because you have certain groups, for lack of a better word, that don't have access for whatever reason, right? There's no access to certain opportunities. And for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion is understanding, right? Saying, okay, look, I understand for one reason or another, a particular group typically doesn't have access to this. And so I'm taking steps to make sure that they have that access. And so it's so important for organizations to understand, because access brings about innovation. Believe it or not, right? Access brings about innovation. And I'll put it this way. Give an example. I came to the US on a soccer scholarship, played college soccer. And the coach we had did something quite interesting. In previous years, they had this team that were made up of mostly locals from the area. So I went to school in Mississippi. And so they will hire people, they'll bring in, student athletes from the South, mostly, from Mississippi, Tennessee, Texas, and they'll do well each season. They'll win a few games, but the year I came, I transferred into the school at the time. he did something radical. He brought in students like me from Africa, he brought student athletes from like Brazil, Colombia, the US, just mixed it up. And we had this incredibly UN team.
Yeah.
And something magical happened that year. We won the nationals.
Wow.
Why? Because we had different play styles, different techniques. Like I was very quick. I'm a wing, I played on the wing, and I was very quick. But one thing I didn't have was I didn't have this ability to basically control the ball in a certain way. And I saw one of my Brazilian teammates, he had this ability on the ball. Like he just knew how to, if you gave him a cross, he knew how to control the ball. He had this vision. I just watched him play and I'll ask him all these questions. And I learned like this is how he grew up playing. I grew up playing the kind of quick on the wings. He grew up playing this precision type of football, right? And from learning that, my game became better because he had a different style of playing and we just all made each other better. And so when we came on the pitch and played as a team, it was magic. And we won the nationals that year. So what I'm trying to say is this, like the differences we brought to the table elevated everyone else. But when they had this one team made up of the same people from the same schools, it didn't break, there was a bit of that spark missing. And that's kind of what it means for me, right?
And I think if you use that analogy in organizations, a lot of times it comes down to where do you typically recruit from? If you recruit from the same sources every year, year after year, the same type of people, the same majors with the same backgrounds, you're not going to get that kind of diversity. You're not going to get that cross-pollination that you need to be able to get to what you're talking about, which is a richness in technique, which is a richness in background that you can get when you look a little bit differently instead of looking at the normal places that you have for decades, for centuries, whatever. Look elsewhere and you get that richness.
Absolutely.
And I'm amazed hearing the story. I think of the coach with this, and I think of how that translates into diversity in the workplace and whatnot. And that takes guts. That takes somebody saying, you know what, I need to make myself uncomfortable by bringing in people who don't look like me, who don't have the same background as me, who don't fit the norm of what the team looks like. That takes guts. And, but it also takes that vision and strategic outlook to say, this is what we need to be able to have a stronger team and to be able to advance to where we need to.
Yeah.
But Joseph, what you were talking about before, though, and I think to go back to the question, and Dwight, I'm going to get to your point on leadership in a little bit, but one of the things I want to get back to in your question is achievability. Because, taking your example and taking it one step further, it's interesting to have a conversation with an organization and to be able to ask the recruiters or ask the leaders to change where or how they look. It's another thing to think about the problem that we have in this country and in the world around diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is to ask people to put aside any bias that they have, whether it's an innate bias which they don't really understand they have, or if it's the way they've always done things. Put it aside and look for the right person at the right time for the right job, whether it's in terms of promotion, what's in terms of a team assignment, giving that person the ability to prove that they can or cannot do something. How is it achievable? That's the question I have. How can it happen?
Yeah. Yeah, no, again, I keep saying the word access, right? I think we all know we have bias of some sort. I have bias. We all do, right?
Definitely.
And can we fully remove it? No. It's impossible fully 100%, but we can do our best to de-bias whatever process that we are in as much as we can, right? And so I think the achievability starts with understanding that. They're saying, hey, look, I have a bias. We all have a bias. We all have biases. Great. Okay, well, but we want to achieve X, Y, Z, right? We want to achieve this diversity goal, this inclusion goal, right? And then not to jump ahead to Dwight's point, but there has to be an element of leadership taking that reign and saying, look, we want to do X, Y, Z, and getting everyone on board.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
Well, let's go there. Let's go to the second question, which is, how do we get who actually has to take the mantle? I mean, and is it leadership of the company? Is it HR that has to take that leadership? Who has to own that? Because that's a critical piece of this.
Yeah, absolutely. It can't be HR, because the thing is, like, a lot of times when it comes to people issues, people always think HR. People issues are a company issue and not just a HR issue. Yeah. And company issues come from the top. Like, you have from the top. I was in an organization, which I won't say the name, whereby they hired a head of DEI, and the head of DEI did so much work to try and push out diversity and inclusion initiatives. And it didn't work. Why? Because the executives at the top didn't give a crap.
Yep.
They didn't care.
Yep.
So it didn't matter what the head of DEI did. This person killed themselves working, doing. I felt so sad for them at one point. I was like, well, I was giving them all the data. I'm like, here's what is. But I saw that the leadership at the time were like, well, that wasn't an issue. And so it didn't matter. And so to bring those 2 points together, I think it is achievable, but it requires the leadership of the company, of the organization, to say, hey, this is something that we want to achieve, and get other executives, other leaders, which in turn gets everyone to be on board, right? Mm-hmm. Our coach did just that. Going to that example, our coach was our leader. He decided this is what he was going to do. And he had to convince the rest of his coaching staff that we're going to go to South Africa to recruit,
right,
to Nigeria, and get all these players.
But he didn't just have to go to his coaching staff. He had to actually go to admissions. He had to go to all the other areas of the leadership inside the college, the company, inside the college, to be able to get that to happen.
Oh, yeah.
I love to see, though, that people push the boundaries of leadership to challenge culture, to challenge industries, to say, are we doing enough? And are we looking at all the possibilities? And the one example that I love that just happened just recently is Deion Sanders went to a historically black college as a football coach. And everybody who knows Deion Sanders, who's one of the greatest receivers of all time. Actually, is he a receiver or is he a defensive back? I should know this. I think he's a defensive back, actually. But Deion Sanders he always played professional football with gusto and style. And everybody who knows him had a very either love-hate relationship with Deion. But one of the things that just happened recently is one of the most highly sought-after college football recruits went to Deion's program because he was seeing that all of the other people were being recruited to the other top-tier schools, but not the historically black colleges. And he wanted to make a change because he wanted to raise the profile of those colleges they have phenomenal educational backgrounds. All of them do. It's great college to go to. But why don't people go there? Because because they get a bad rap. Why? Because all the other people who we want to see play football go to Alabama and Arkansas and Penn State, my alma mater, and they don't go to these historically black colleges. So he made this choice and raised the profile. And everybody's talking about it in the world of college sports now. And it's wonderful to see. He's pushing the culture of college football to say, why not go to these schools?
Yeah.
And so I think that it's not just a leadership thing. Of course, leaders have to drive it. But I think it's also down to employees. Let's let employees also make the culture happen inside their organizations by suggesting people come to the company, by working together as teammates and fostering relationships. And there's also this thing that we've talked about on past conversations, which is employee business groups.
ERGs?
Yes, exactly. Resource groups.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal to get together to understand what other people are going through, whether it's mental health or diversity or other types of BRGs. join them and let the company culture grow from the people, not just from the leadership.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it filters down right. There's, yes, the leadership can say, hey, we want to do this, but everyone has to be on board, absolutely. Right? Because, using that point, right? Like, our coach had to go to the admissions and the leadership in the school to say, hey, we want more scholarship money because you have to give all these players.
Right.
And they had to agree to that.
Right. Exactly.
so it's the same thing. Like, you have to, speak to the teammates, the engineers, everyone saying, look, we are this is the goal we want to get to.
Right.
And everyone has to be able to be inclusive. There should be no room for just people being like, no, we're not going to be inclusive. No, everyone has to be on board for that to work. Mm-hmm. So is it achievable? Absolutely. But it takes a village. It takes everyone. Absolutely. Everyone has to be on board to get that to happen.
I think HR gets tarnished because they're typically the cheerleaders and they're the process owners of all of these things, including owning the measurement and the achieving
right.
Are we achieving our goals in diversity? Yeah. And unfortunately, that means they have to become the cops of it. They have to become the police and tell people you're not doing enough, when instead of that, they should be coaching and doing a better job getting the leadership to do that work.
You see that play out in so many different arenas, and it gets back to the point that you made earlier, Joseph, about the DEI person and how they worked, but didn't have the leadership buy-in. And I've seen that in the past too, where, to your point, David, it gets relegated to HR. This was when I was working in an HR function, and we had one person whose sole job it was to bring together the statistics, be able to report it out to the business units, and it was all built around compliance with the law. And, so I think we're going through, we have to, and hopefully are starting to go through this shift as well, away from that, where, like you said, it's not HR's function, and we're not doing it to comply with the law. We need to shift our mindset with that and say, we're doing this because it's the right thing to do. And this is the right thing for the company. And that's a tough shift to make, both, from the leadership perspective and, to your point earlier, David, down to all the employees. How do you shift that mindset? But we're getting there,
And I think that brings us to our next question, Dwight, which is, what processes, what does the organization need to do to actually implement a change so that the employees have a better experience around inclusivity?
Yeah, no, it's one of the things I always say. I think probably in every podcast or any conversation I'm in, I think probably people are probably tired of hearing it, but things you cannot change what you don't measure.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Right? Like you have to measure it. And so I think the measurement starts from the beginning. So if you think about this employee life cycle, obviously it starts with, even before the hiring, the sourcing, right? Starts with the sourcing and the hiring pipeline, the process, and then once it comes to the organization, the pay, the promotion, and the engagement, all the way to the offboarding, right? That cycle. And so from the beginning, you have to measure that. You have to understand, okay, what is happening from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective. How many for a particular role? How is the job description written? Is there even a bias in the way the job description is written? All the way to like, okay, how many people even applied for the job? If you have 100 applications and 90 of them are men, 10% of them are women, why is that even happening? Right. And then people that got to the final stage of the interview, you have 10 people in the final stage of the interview and 9 of them are men and 1 is a woman. Okay, well, what's happening? Why is that? Is that because of the recruiters? Is that because of the hiring manager? Right?
Could be the job description, by the way.
Could be the job description, right? To begin
exactly.
with. So you have to be very intentional from the beginning and all the way. And then once you hire the person, okay, well, are they being promoted at similar rates as their peers? Right? Like, this is a Black woman in the same role. Is she being promoted at the same rate? Oh, this Black woman was promoted once every 3 years, but her peers, every of our peers that are men, were promoted once every year and a half. Yeah. well, like what's happening here, right? Or in terms of pay, is the pay the same for the same exact role? Like, these are things all across the way that companies have to pay attention to and measure. And that's one of the ways I would say.
And I totally agree with you. And I think the problem is you're talking about a Rubik's Cube. There are so many ways of looking at it and so many different things and so many differences between people. It's not just ethnicity. It's not just gender. It's not just mental health status. It's not just veteran status. There is so much that you could be measuring that in a lot of cases it becomes a paralysis of, where do I begin? And I like your idea of starting with a process and looking at who made up our process. How did the slate get from X to Y, from requisition all the way through to hire, and then take the employee lifecycle? Once they were hired, how many did we turn? How many turnover of new hires did we have? And what was their ethnicity? What was their background? And why? And then let's dive in. Yeah. But the problem is, and you should know this as a data scientist, I'm sure that you have had an opportunity to look at these things. What becomes the problem is that people then, they get really worried about what is the most critical thing to measure first. Where is the first step? What do I do first? What's my jumping off point here, Joseph?
Yeah, I mean, you can go different ways, to be honest. I've seen companies start in different ways. But, one of the things I will always say is there's a lot of things you can measure, like you mentioned. Don't let that stop you from starting.
That's good, yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so a lot of times what I've seen from my own experiences, and what I would just say to people ask me, okay, what is the one place? I'm like, well, start at the hiring. Start at the hiring, right? You can always measure in terms of like the promotion, the pay, the engagement, right? All of that stuff. But again, you usually, a lot of companies are usually hiring on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? So maybe start with that and then go from there, right? See, okay, what does our hiring process look like? I mean, once you're in, you have to do stuff, but let's even start with just understanding at that top of the funnel, right? Yeah. What is happening there? And so a lot of companies, when they start looking at their people analytics journey and trying to understand what's happening from a DEI perspective, what I've seen is the easier place to start from is actually the hiring. So if anyone is to start it today, I'll just start with your hiring, your talent metrics. Just try to understand, okay, in the pipeline, what's happening here, all right? And then go from there. Again, you see, what I've seen is in organizations is employees don't necessarily want you to have all the answers tomorrow, no. But they want to see that you are doing something, and they want to see a path. Saying, okay, look, right. Here's what we are doing right now. Here's what we want to get to. We know we're not there, but we're doing this actively, and you're communicating that. Where the issue lies is whereby you're not actually communicating that to organizations. They don't know what's happening, right. And they're seeing all these issues. And then that's kind of why you start seeing all these issues prop up. Otherwise, like if you can communicate and say, here's what we're doing. We know we are not where we need to be, but here's the things we're starting with, and here's where we want to go in the future.
Absolutely. But that has to go back to the point you made in the second question about leadership, right? Yeah. Because that can't come from HR, and it can't come from the diversity group either. That has to come from the head of HR, the CEO, the president, because I mean, as a leader yourself, you know that if it doesn't come from you, the where are we and what are we doing about it, then it's not happening. There is no transparency in those analyses.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. No, it has to. No, it has to. I mean, like it's the same way. Like it's the same way when you think about like the revenue goals or sales goals, right? Like it's like like they want to see what leadership what's happened. Like the issue of diversity isn't divorced from the issue of the business. It's the same. It goes hand in hand, right? Yeah. Right? Because again, the issue of diversity is the issue of innovation. It's the issue of change. It's the issue of progress, right? And those things all contributes to positive culture, which contributes to positive business, which contributes to more growth, right? Yeah, and so that's kind of why it has to. The same way the CEO or the CFO has to stand in front of the company and talk about the revenue goals and all the vision of the company. It's the same way they need to talk about diversity and inclusion to their employees.
And I think we've seen consumers vote with their feet and vote with their dollars, where they want to work with companies, they want to buy from companies that are doing the right thing, not just from a hiring perspective, not just from a organizational design perspective, but they want to know that the employees are being treated well and that the end result is that they're going to get better service, they're going to get more innovative products, and they want to put their money against a company or with a company, or they want to invest in the company that is actually doing the right things for their employees.
Absolutely. I mean, diversity, equity, inclusion is not a nice to have, right? It's like a need. This
it's
is
a
part of
have
the
to
shoot.
have. Yeah, exactly.
And the good news is, because we're having these conversations now on podcasts, and the government is having them, or the government is instituting laws like the SEC put in Regulation SK, which says that any of the HR metrics that are material in nature need to be mandated to be disclosed in SEC filings. So for public companies, we're learning about things like this, maybe in some companies for the first time, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So hopefully the conversation's not going to stop. It's going to keep going, and that's going to lead to better behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, transparency helps, everyone, right? Especially like disenfranchised groups more, right? Like, when things are opaque, it's always a disadvantage to that. And so having those kind of metrics being open to shit, then this is going to push organizations to say, okay, well, we need to get some of these things right. And again, like, change is painful. I mean, oh my gosh, it is, right? A certain way of doing things, setting norms that has been the same way for a long time. It's always a weird feeling. There's always some people don't even want to discuss. I've seen some executives that are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about it.
Oh yeah,
right.
Like,
It's a scary thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is scary. But like, I think in the long run, it's gonna be good for everyone as a whole. As we move towards that future whereby we have more diverse teams and organizations.
That's great. So, Joseph, we've had a conversation today around DE&I, and it's been a fascinating conversation about talking about it through the lens of how we measure it and how we understand how the processes need to change in organizations in order to make them more diverse. We've talked a little bit about who is the owner of those processes, or who should be the owner. And we've also talked about how. How does it actually happen and where to start? Any other thoughts that you have before we wrap?
Yeah, I think we're in a time where the way we work has changed. If you told me that I'll get used to working from home, like 2 years ago, I'd be like,
right, exactly,
right. These things are changing, and it's going to continue to change. And I feel like organizations need to change along with it, because I've seen some executives that are just like, no, like, people need to come back. Like, everyone has to come back because people are not doing the, and like, who is it really hurting? Who are you really hurting in the long run? Right.
Right. I don't know.
And so I feel like, one of the things is, like, in talking to just even a lot of other, people of color, like, for them, this has been a huge blessing for them. Like, they work from home, right? And for various reasons. But I'm feeling, my thing is, organizations, executives, leaders, HR teams, we need to adapt and pay attention to what our employees are saying, right? What, the change that's currently happening, and the more we can do that, then I think the more the employee experience with an organization is going to be even a lot better, right? And so, yeah, that's one of the big things I'm seeing that I want to just kind of add to that as well.
Perfect. Joseph, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, Dwight, thank you.
Thank you. And Joseph, thank you so much for spending the time with us. This was a fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
And next time, we're going to have to geek out a little bit on your FC, on your Arsenal background, and a little bit into sports analytics too.
Absolutely.
Great. And thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. And if you think that you know somebody who might enjoy this, please forward the podcast to them. And if you have any comments, please send them our way. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.